Thank you all for joining us once again for Rebel Fawn. I have the honor today to be here with awesome High Republic author Justina Ireland. Justina, thank you
Hello.
so much for joining us today. I don't know about you, but I am so excited to be here.
I'm
All
always
right,
excited to be somewhere. Anywhere is good.
places. We remember places. To get us started off, you write YA for Star Wars, which, in my admittedly biased opinion, is a criminally underrated subset of literature. What do you find most rewarding about writing YA for Star Wars?
So YA is really where I got my start. I love writing books that people tend to dismiss because I think it's more of a challenge than to really put out a good piece of work. I love the writing about one of the things that's great about writing YA, and some of the Star Wars books I read are middle grade, which is that younger range of YA. We sometimes we adults just see them all as kids books, but YA is really 12 and up, and middle grade is 8 to 12. There's something really fun about writing for those age groups because everything is new for those readers, right? Like they're not jaded and bitter like us adults. Like they're still like, yay, the world is cool. And so sometimes it's a lot more fun because you can do a lot of the storytelling that maybe adult, readers would be like, that's silly. And in those spaces, people, they want to be entertained. They want to have fun. And sometimes we adults do not. Sometimes we're very serious. So I do love that, the just being able to write stories that are fun at their heart, even if they deal with difficult issues along the way.
So then, along the same vein, what about writing YA and middle grade for Star Wars do you find most challenging?
I think the most challenging is really, it's never the kid readers that are challenging. Kid readers are amazing. It's always the adults who want a book to be something that it's not. And I think, I read a lot of middle grade books. I read a lot of YA books, but I always have to keep in the back of my mind that I'm not the intended age group, right? So if I find something a little silly, it might be because, for a 12-year-old, that's incredibly weighty and that's an incredibly difficult topic, and you have to approach it a little more delicately for them. You shouldn't expect, necessarily a high body count in a middle grade book because, rampant murder is not really what we want to give kids. And so that's just one of those things. I think a lot of times we do have the biggest challenge is always the adults, because they tend to just bring all of that bias with them. So yeah, so like and to be honest, it's like, well, I didn't write for adults anyway, so it's okay.
So you've worked on two other Star Wars books before the High Republic, correct? Lando's Luck and Spark of the Resistance.
Correct.
How has working on the High Republic been different from those projects?
I don't think there's any surprise that there's way more creative freedom. And it's not just, it's not like, the hammer of Lucasfilm saying you can't write that, because that's not it at all. It's more about you don't have to worry about, for example, keeping characters alive. If we haven't noticed, if you've read the first wave of books, then you very much know that like some of your favorites might die, and they might die the next page as you turn the page. And so I do think that's one of the really exciting things, is not necessarily killing characters, but having the freedom. Like, I don't, if you read a book with Luke Skywalker, we know Luke Skywalker's life story. We know he's gonna make it out alive. He's not in danger. And you don't get that sort of safety net with the High Republic. You also, we're dealing with a lot of like new stuff. Like we tend to like, one of my favorite things about the original trilogy is how old everything looks, right? It's space, but everything looks old, which is such uh, a counterbalance to something like Star Trek, where everything always looks new all the time, right? And so like we don't have old space stuff in ours, right? Because it's a different time period. The galaxy hasn't been at war or hasn't been under imperialism for a really long time. So like there, there are people coming up with new things and inventing things, and we get to see that. We get to see that with the launch of Starlight Beacon, and we get to see that with some of the discussions we have around the ships and the Jedi vectors. So I do think that's one of the fun things about working in this time period, is there is a lot of more creative freedom, because you don't have to worry about this movie or that movie, or keeping characters alive to get them to the movies, such as like with Spark of the Resistance.
That leads great into my next question. So the High Republic, as we've seen it so far, is just such a rich and detailed subset of Star Wars in a way that, at least for me, feels very unique. And I feel like part of that is that you have this creative core team who is writing the story together. What has been your favorite part of being part of that core in the High Republic?
I love a good nerd fight, and the best kind of nerd fights are the ones where you all agree at the end that everything is awesome, and like what you're fighting about are exactly like the things that you love, right? Like I'm not interested in like, what is the worst Star Wars character, because I mean, you can make an argument for any character, but like, who's your favorite Star Wars character? Who is the best Jedi? Why are they the best Jedi? Like, those are the kind of like fights I love to have. And as a creative team, we got to kind of have those discussions, right? We got to say, what do we love about the original trilogy? Like, what would be cool to see that we haven't seen before? And then we're doing it together, so there's a system of checks and balances. So if someone puts out an idea, and the idea, you're like, oh wait, that's completely undone by like this world building that we already know, then it really makes the idea stronger. So like what readers are getting is something that's been shopped in a way that we've been able to work out most of the wrinkles before it gets to, before we start writing a book, which isn't always the case. Sometimes when you're writing a book, you're, working out the wrinkles as you're drafting. So that's one of the nice things about working collaboratively. There are characters that, other folks, like I never would have come up with Geode. Like that is totally Claudia. Like she's like, I have a character who's a navigator who everyone just thinks is a rock. And I'm like, that's hilarious. But I never would have come up with that. Right. And so, it's one of those things that's like, it's nice because not only do you get to enjoy the things other people are creating, but you got to create it together. So it's really kind of like the best part of like Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's like, that's the best way to describe it, is like, everybody made something a little different. We all agreed on the menu beforehand. And now you get to kind of sit down together and sample like this amazing meal that we've all prepared. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
So your awesome Nerd Fight Thanksgiving dinner team has introduced us to so many new characters to love in the High Republic. I know I've really been enjoying watching people fall in love with different characters from throughout the books, but do you have a favorite from the new era?
I feel like I can't have a favorite because it's like mom having a favorite. It's like, I love all of my space babies. But I do say I am super enjoying everything that's come out. I love the Marvel High Republic, because it's just like Cav's story is so great. I love Keeve, and if you heard that, that's my cat. There's like a toy on the other side of the table. I love Keeve. But like, I love the art. Arya's art, the colors are so bright. And I think it's really, for me, as somebody who mostly writes prose, it's really cool to be able to go and see those characters come to life in the comics, and then like go back and like write them, now that I have another idea of them. So yeah, I can't, there's not like a character where I'm like, that's it, that's my favorite character, because every single time I sit down to spend time with a new character, that becomes my favorite character. And it's one of the amazing things about this initiative.
That is fair. Same boat, honestly.
Yeah.
So your first book in the High Republic, A Test of Courage, has been out for a bit now, and I've got to say, loved it. Got the audiobook, ordered it from your local bookstore like your website said. Did you have a favorite part to write in that book?
I really had a lot of fun with the sort of the Jedi lore. I love Jedi lore. I am a history nerd, and like Jedi lore like scratches that itch for me, because it's like you're talking about stuff that happened way before. And so like, a lot of the conversations between Vernestra and Imri like were really like a lot of fun, because it's like you got to kind of dig into some of that Jedi lore. But honestly, like writing that the one scene where the steady wing is going down, like that is probably the part of the book I'm the most proud of, because I went through that, like how do you imagine a ship in space crashing? Because it wouldn't necessarily fall, right? There's no gravity. So it would just kind of drift and like, yeah. So like, it was like one of those things. It's like, I had to spend expel a lot of brain energy thinking about, okay, am I going to put it close to a planet so it can crash? Am I going to let it explode in space? And how do I do that in a middle grade book so I don't traumatize my poor younger readers? Which is really kind of always the central command for me as a writer, is to do no harm to my readers, to make sure that like I'm giving them a story that they could handle, and like maybe it might be a little difficult at times, but kind of shepherding them through that narrative. And so yeah, so like that was, I think that's, man, I really do love those conversations between Vernestra and Imri, which some people might say are the most boring part, but I love Jedi lore. So um, Jedi lore and hyperspace, man, those are my things I love. So
I feel like we're definitely on the same wavelength here, because my next question is about what my favorite part of A Test of Courage was. I was really touched by the way that Vernestra was handling Imri's spoilers for readers who've not read A Test of Courage, which really, why have you not read A Test of Courage yet? Go do that. Pause this right now, go do that, come back. But I was really touched by the way that she handled Imri's brush with the dark side, giving him both accountability and compassion and space to feel those big emotions and mess up and still be a Jedi. To me, that was the most Jedi moment of the book. Could you talk a little bit about that theme of dealing with hard emotions and how you've brought that into your Star Wars books?
yeah, I mean, I think it's no surprise that as a society, we have more challenges with mental health right now than probably we've ever acknowledged before, right? Mental health has always been a challenge, but we've really been bad with dealing with that. But part of that is recognizing that the emotions you're feeling are okay, but you have to acknowledge them. Like I'm not a big fan of burying your emotions, of like just putting them to the side, that very, stoic way of life. And I mean, honestly, if someone had just taken Anakin inside and said, "Hey, man, I know you're having a bad day. Like, you're in love with that girl and she's really hot. We get it." I think like maybe we would have had a completely different. We wouldn't have had Star Wars. It would have just been, Star Planets adventures or something. So I just like I feel like there's so much that we teach each other and ourselves about what it means to be a hero, and what it means to be bold and go and be an adventurer, and it never gets to the level of compassion. And I think sometimes compassion and empathy are the hardest emotions to have, because you don't want to understand that person that you don't like. You don't want to understand like why someone is stepping outside what we consider right and wrong. But that's when we do the most work as human beings. And so I do think if like we're talking about Jedi who are like the best, right, at like being centered and connected to the galaxy, they should understand those emotions. They should understand the importance of acknowledging them, maybe not wallowing in them, but acknowledging those emotions and working past those in a healthy manner more than anyone else. And if you don't agree, that's okay. But I do think as me as a human being, that's where I want to be with at the end of my life. I don't want to get to the end of my life and people say, yeah, she was fine, but she had zero empathy, right? That, she was, she's kind of a, like, that's not where anybody wants to be on their deathbed. People want to say like, yeah, I had a bad day that one time, and, they listened. And like, that's what we do with our friends and our families. We listen and we help them get through those difficult parts. So yeah, that's really, it's just sort of a central philosophy of we do more together than alone. And getting to that point sometimes means that you have to help people through those rough patches.
Definitely wish with you on the hashtag get Anakin Skywalker therapy train.
Poor Anakin. He's just a sad kid, man.
So you have two more projects with release dates announced in the High Republic. You have Out of the Shadows coming up, the novel, and you have the manga Edge of Balance. Now,
Yes.
I'm sure you're very limited in what you can tell us about those projects, but what that you're allowed to tell us about in those are you most excited for fans to see?
I'm super excited for fans to meet Sylvester Yarrow, who is sort of our non-Jedi hero of Out of the Shadows. Because I think, we got introduced to a lot of Jedi up front, but I've always really kind of liked the non-Jedi, because it's really, how do you survive in a galaxy full of like all these other species and then also space wizards, and you're just a regular person who maybe flies a ship, right? So you're like a truck driver and all of this stuff is happening around you and you have to somehow navigate that. So I've always found that super compelling. So I'm really excited for people to meet Sylvester Yarrow, because I do think it's nice to have more than one perspective of the Jedi at this time period. And then I'm really excited, just to be writing YA. I love YA. YA gets to have a higher body count. There's a little more like like on-screen violence with YA than there is in middle grade. And not that you're going to get like anything splatterpunk, but it is just nice to have like a little bit more complex level of storytelling. So I'm really excited with that. For Edge of Balance, that is such a passion project. That is mostly me just coming in with Shima Shinya, and just kind of like us trying to get at the story. It's going to be super cool. I'm excited. It's going to deal with a part of the galaxy we haven't seen yet. And it's coming in, I think it's the publication date now is September. So, it's kind of going to be falling in between our next wave of books and whatever comes in the future. Ah ha ha, you almost got me. And future things. So it'll be a nice sort of, I think, break. Also, I really love the mangas that we've had in Star Wars so far. And most of them have been adaptations of other things. So it's really exciting to be able to be part of new storytelling in the manga format.
So one of the things about the High Republic that I know has touched so many fans who haven't necessarily seen themselves in the Star Wars universe before is how committed it is to broad and meaningful representation across a lot of different axes. I know as a queer fan, when we were that moment in episode 2 of the High Republic show, when they mentioned that Sylvester has an ex-girlfriend, I lost my mind. I was so excited. And I know that bringing more diverse voices, especially more characters of color, into YA fiction is a priority of yours as well. I'd love to hear your take on why representation in media is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things, if you're arguing against it, it's probably because you already have representation. I don't really know a lot of people who are like, I've never seen myself in media and I don't want to. Right? Like we all, like, it's back to that idea of like stories. So like fundamentally, Star Wars at its heart is a story, and stories are about connection. And the reason Star Wars is so amazing is because it's connected with so many people. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind, is that when you connect with a lot of people like that, you kind of want to welcome them in. Like, I mean, why would you only want to welcome half the people in that you've connected with by way of story? But I also think representation is important for us to realize that we're all human beings and we all go through like kind of the same, bullshit. And that if we see each other as human beings, it goes a long way to eliminating a lot of our problems, right? Like, I'm also queer. I'm, married to a dude, but like I've also gone through like that of like, I just want to see someone who like, doesn't see that their path to fall in love is with one type of person. Like I want to see that. I want to experience that. But I'm only going to live one life. And I want to experience as many other lives as I can while I'm here. So that's another thing that representation gives us. It's like you're never going to, fully understand that other person's, point of view, but you can spend some time in their shoes, and that's pretty awesome. That makes us like better people. It makes us, back to that idea of empathy. We are coming out of a pandemic where a lot of people showed just how little empathy they had for one another, and that's kind of upsetting. And I don't know of any school of thought that says no empathy is the way to go. I mean, maybe jerks probably think that way. So I do think like representation is important, because I do think it's important for us to remember that Star Wars is for everyone. Also, if you're going to have storytelling that takes place in a galaxy with thousands of planets, and your complaint is about, brown people or queer people showing up, that says way more about you than anything else. And if that's who you are, then just own it, right? Say like, I hate Black people and I don't want them in Star Wars. Cool. I don't want to deal with you. I'm not writing for that person. I'm writing for the fans who are like, I want great storytelling. I want to know more about the people who live there. Like, I want to know about like the people in the background. Like, my favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One, which I know a lot of people are like, it's so sad. It is, but I love it because what we get just like the regular people, right? Like you just get regular people like showing up and making really difficult choices. And that is amazing because it shows that even though we've always told sort of like the Skywalker story, there are a lot of other people who've been touched by that, and a lot of other people who helped that victory come to be. I do think like we're best when we're talking to a wider group of people who don't necessarily look like us. Also, I live in the United States, and our whole thing is, we welcome people from across the world. I mean, we haven't always been great at it, but we are definitely stronger for it as a society. And so I would think the galaxy would be the same way. And so that's always been my thing. I understand why people want to push back against ideas of representation, but the reality is, if you have 85% of the toys in this toy box and someone takes away one, are you really going to notice it? Or as opposed to if you have no toys in the toy box and somebody gives you a toy, it's going to be a lot more, influential, and you're going to feel welcome. So yeah, I mean, like, Star Wars is for everybody. Representation should be a no-brainer. Don't be that's pretty much my manifesto.
Well, then follow up to that. How do you go about writing representation so that it's meaningful to the fans who are looking for that?
I think honestly, you just have to write people as people. I think sometimes my least favorite representation is when you get the character who exists only in that space to be like the Black character, and they basically come on screen, they're like, yo, I'm Black, and then they roll out. And it's like, okay, man. And I think that's really just it. Like, I think, people were like, I don't want your agenda. I don't want, people telling me I need to read these books or whatever, but you don't have to read the books. That's one of the great things about, living in a free country, is you can make choice how to spend your money and time. But the other thing is if you think any of the characters I've written have only been there to be like the Black character, I failed as an author, because I'm not writing you a Black character. I'm writing you a character who's also Black. And that's okay. I don't necessarily, if I'm writing books about, Black identity, it's probably not going to be a Star Wars book, just because, they don't really have the societal structure that we have in our world. But at the same time, I think it's silly to think that everybody in the galaxy looks one sort of way and thinks one sort of way and acts one sort of way, because it's boring. It's incredibly boring, right? Like, we get it. We had a Princess Leia. She's awesome. But if you have 50 more of her, she's not Princess Leia anymore. She's just one of 50 people, right? What makes Princess Leia awesome is because she's so unique compared to other characters we had seen at the times. And so, yeah, I think it's just one of those things. It's like just good storytelling is just naturally diverse. And if you're going to write people, write them as people, even if they happen to be Ithorians or something. Just write them as people.
I love that. And that's definitely how I've felt with the queer representation we've had in the High Republic so far. So y'all are doing great. Keep it up.
Yay!
All right, so complete track shift here. And I totally understand if as the writer rather than the artist, you either don't know or can't tell me, but I'm a Jedi costumer and I have to ask. So in the Rebel Legion, we can't make costumes until we've seen them from all sides. And there's been a notable lack with a certain aspect of Jedi characters in the High Republic so far. So a lot of us are excited for Edge of Balance, visual media, hoping it's going to fill in that lack. So my question is, are we going to see any Jedi's backs in the manga?
I don't know, man. Like, I'm thinking, and I think we try to do the same thing we do in like TV and film, where we try to always show you people from their fronts. It's like, man, I'm so sorry. Maybe we can get like a StarWars.com to just do just all the backs of every character. So yeah. Because I can't think of any back shot.
We see Skier.
Oh yeah,
that's it. That's about it.
Oh man, I'm gonna ask Lucasfilm if we can just do just the backs.
I think that every Jedi costumer in the world will personally give you their firstborn child if you do. All right. So, more general question. Non-High Republic question, even. So it's really obvious from all your Star Wars books that you know and love a lot of parts of the Star Wars universe, not just the High Republic. So do you have a favorite character in an era other than the High Republic?
Oh my God. So this is always the hard question, because it's like, depending on where I've been and what I've just done. I love Chirrut Îmwe. Probably mispronounced it. From Rogue One. I love his faith. And I think faith is one of the things, like even with the prequels and the prequel Jedi, sometimes you don't have to have faith if you can touch the Force and feel the Force and use the Force, right? Your faith then comes to like the Order and the people you're with. So I love Chirrut because he is one of the characters that has so much faith, and his faith drives him. Sometimes in a way you're just like, come on, man. He's also him and I always forget. I think it's, oh my God, I just blanked. But yeah, like I just love that faith. I also love Mace Windu. I just feel like as a Jedi, he got short shrift. The worst, one of the worst deaths. Actually, there are a lot of bad deaths in that Order 66 scene, but one of them. And I'm just like, I just want, like, if Darth Maul can be cut in half and make it, I just want Mace Windu. I just want like a post Order 66 Mace Windu who's like coming up out of like whatever kind of back to tank like coma he's been put into, finds out the Order's completely destroyed, and then just goes out in the galaxy as like the lone gunslinger. And I mean, like, it would just be such a great story. I love Mace Windu. I just really do. Because I just feel like he was the first time, like, I really thought back to that representation question. That was the first time like we got to see a Black Jedi. It's the first time we got to see a Black character that wasn't like, hey ladies. So like, as much as I love Lando, like Mace was really so like the first time he lights up that purple lightsaber, like I just remember everyone going, oh, like, and it's just so great. And I do love, there's so much of Star Wars to love. That's the thing. It's like if you feel like you don't like something, just wait 10-15 minutes and something new will come along that you will love. And that's what I always tell people, because people are like, well, I don't really read the books. I'm like, that's okay. And they're like, well, should I read the books and comics? I'm like, well, if you like the movies, you'll probably like the books and the comics. And if you don't like reading, then don't, because you're not gonna like reading. But I do think there's so much awesomeness. But yeah, I really love Chirrut. I feel like he just never gets the love he deserves.
That's entirely accurate. Mace deserves better, though. They didn't show us a body. You can't prove he's dead. That's the rules.
He's not dead. I'm just waiting till I get my chance to do a Mace Windu Marvel. Mace, the retired gunslinger, traveling the galaxy, setting wrongs right.
Disney, please hear this. I will give you all of my money. All right, so question you may not be able to answer, and that's okay. Beyond the projects that have official release dates, do you have any other upcoming Star Wars projects that you're allowed to tell us about?
I have other upcoming Star Wars projects, but they are secrets.
Okay.
So
keep your secrets then.
They're
all right. So
in my heart.
Star Wars obviously is not all the writing you do. It's not even most of the writing you do. So do you have upcoming projects that aren't Star Wars that you'd like to signal boost with us?
Sure. I have my first middle grade book, non-Star Wars middle grade book, coming out next month. Well, actually, this might be this month. It's in May 18th. And it's called Opie's Ghosts. And it's sort of The Great Gatsby meets The Sixth Sense, where a girl goes to Pittsburgh after her father is killed and discovers that she can see ghosts. And as she's working in this really opulent mansion, she's trying to help the ghosts solve their problems. So that's my next book. And then I have some stuff, but everything else is coming out like next year. So books publishing is so long, it takes forever.
All right then. Last and by far the most important question of this interview. If you were a Jedi, what color would your lightsaber be?
Oh, hands down purple. I love purple. Everything I have is purple. It's kind of a joke in our house that if I walk by something that's purple, I'm probably going to want to get it. My wallet's purple. My phone case is purple. My backpack is purple. My luggage is purple. So yeah, my lightsaber would definitely be purple. And if not purple, I would love orange, just because I feel like there's not enough orange lightsabers. We really need more orange.
All right then. Justina, thank you so much for joining us today, for taking us through some love of the High Republic. Do you have any final closing remarks for your adoring Rebel fans?
Oh, nope. Star Wars is there for everyone. Everyone should love it.
All right then. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks. And Rebelthon, back to you.